What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. What's up, everyone? Ryan Kramer with Crossover Commerce. Thanks for joining us for another episode live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is episode 25. Thanks for joining us again. If this is your first time, welcome. Our show is majorly focused around giving a perspective on different assets of Amazon and e-commerce. I am the host of this show. I like to call everyone of the show a friend, and people who give different perspectives to help you, an Amazon seller or an e-commerce brand or an e-commerce entity in general, a different way to kind of look at the world of e-commerce. But what I do with the show is I bring on different people every single day, or at least almost, it feels like every single day, to kind of talk about different topics. Today, we're actually talking about how to recover lost money on Amazon. It almost sounds like a scam, but it's not. It's truly not. But I brought in one of my former colleagues, and I say colleagues, peers, from when I was working on Viral Launch. His name is Joseph over at Seller Locker. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're just chatting a little bit. We've actually known each other before Ping Pong, going back to when I was working with Viral Launch, but you've been around at Seller Locker. Gosh, it feels like forever. It seems like, or at least I'm assuming it feels like forever for you.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know who Seller Locker is or who you are, give us a quick personal intro of yourself, maybe how you got to where you are, how you started co-started Seller Locker, and then what you guys are doing today.
Awesome, for sure. So nice seeing you again. It's been a long time.
Absolutely.
And thanks for having me. So for those who don't know, Seller Locker is a reimbursement software. And maybe if I can grab the screen. So we started this company about 3 years ago. Initially, I was a e-com director for this pretty big company called Equity Brands. And in working as that e-com director, we kind of needed to streamline many parts of the business. So, you can't do every single thing every single day. And the bigger the business and the more the business scales, the harder it is to manage. And one of the biggest challenges that we had was the reimbursement space. Trusting a third-party provider to blindly open up cases on our behalf was something that we didn't feel comfortable doing at the time. And we kind of wanted to create our own system. So what we did was we created this tool. We called it Briefcase internally. It was this little software that we built to open up cases, get some insight into our profitability. And after recovering a few $100,000, we said, hey, this is really, a powerful product. Let's beta test this with a few of our friends and family. And before you knew it, we jumped into the reimbursement space, but with kind of a different approach with the software perspective. And with that perspective, we were able to go after different types of cases, go a little bit deeper into these cases, give the seller the transparency that they were looking for, and definitely the bigger sellers the transparency that they were looking for. And eventually that took us to also adding on the service part of Seller Locker, because even though, it works with just a few clicks of a button, a lot of sellers are still too busy and they don't have the manpower to do this in-house. And that's when we released the service portion. So today, Seller Locker has the software part of our business. We have the service part of our business where we have virtual assistants working on your account using the same software that I guess I'll show you in a little bit, helping sellers recover tens of thousands of dollars a month. And we have, an end-to-end solution taking a case from the beginning stages, which is prepping a claim, all the way to getting that claim resolved with going back and forth with Amazon many times. And I guess we'll jump into that when I show you a small demo of the tool.
Yeah, for sure. And we like I said, for anyone who's curious, just, what is this recovery tool, or just what's recovery for Amazon in general? We'll go very high level. And obviously, Joseph is a colleague and a person who knows what he's talking about. But this show obviously is centered around just kind of making people aware that this kind of a solution or these kinds of tactics exist. So walk me through. I'm an Amazon seller. I am selling day to day. I think everything's perfectly fine. It's honky dory. I think sales are crushing it. Where does Seller Locker kind of come into play? What's that misconception that Amazon sellers are maybe getting?
Right. So great question. So sellers are totally busy, consumed with sales, consumed with replenishment, advertising, and what ends up happening is they send inventory to Amazon. that inventory gets there either completely or partially. There's some mistakes that can happen there at the receiving process. Let's assume things got there, all fine and well, all that inventory was received. At any point throughout the process after that, it gets received by Amazon, that inventory can get lost, damaged. Amazon can randomly remeasure one of your products, increasing your FBA fee. There could be some customer returns, customer damages, the 17 different types of things that can happen to your inventory or ways that Amazon could potentially overcharge you. And sellers really don't have the time to just audit Amazon all day long. They'd rather stay, into sales and into advertising, things that are going to increase their business, but they don't have enough time to look at the leakage that's happening on their account.
Right. So yeah, and people just don't. People might be asking, like, Amazon does these kinds of things. Like, I didn't realize that it's Amazon, will change my measurements. Well, those are all scary things to maybe like a first time seller or someone who just hasn't thought about this. What's kind of the not reason? Like, Amazon never really has a reason, right? They always just do what they do for one way or another. But what is it that brought kind of this like attention to like people like yourself or like Atita or any other company that maybe like helps people recover money? What's, where was that, like, people were realizing, oh crap, like this is something that I'm missing out on 6 figures, 7 figures potentially on just like lost or damaged items? Right.
So this space has been here for a while, at least 7 years.
Right.
Why we jumped in was that need for transparency. And many companies feel the same way, where they maybe have someone in-house, or they at least want to watch the entire process. When we got into the space, it was just kind of like this black box of, hey, there's reimbursements. I can't tell you anything about it, but you can just sign up and we'll send you free money. But, for a company our size, we were curious. Okay, we see we're getting back money, but how many cases are we losing? How many cases is Amazon denying us? Is there certain scenarios where if we had an additional document, can we have pushed that case forward? What about FBA fees? That was something that was not done, 3 years ago. So we said, hey, perhaps with more transparency and with some automation, we can take this to the next level internally. I'll show you 1 or 2 examples of what I mean by that. But that was kind of the gist. How can we bring software, keep that personal touch by having our people manage the software, and potentially take that reimbursement to the next level, get as much back as we can.
That's awesome. And does this like happen for? We're an international show, so this is people who are listening from, and we'll kind of like them through. Hello, everyone who's joining again. If you're listening on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on YouTube, everyone, hello, welcome to the show. Thanks for kind of chiming in. If you have questions, obviously, definitely answer or reach out to us, whether this is live or rewatching on YouTube or Facebook later. We'll definitely make sure we tag Joseph or whomever we can to answer that question for you. So when we're an international company, we're located all around the world. People are listening from India, China, South Korea. We have people from all over Europe. When you're an Amazon seller, does this affect just United States market, or does this affect international marketplaces as well?
So it affects, I know for a fact, it affects Europe, Canada, Mexico. So it's really in all different places, wherever Amazon has fulfillment centers or customers, and we know they have customers everywhere. These issues can arise, customer returns, customer damages. So it's definitely an international problem, to answer your question.
Yeah. So when everyone's a seller, what are they going to be looking for? How do you spot this if you're doing it yourself, or maybe what's the difference between spotting it yourself, looking at it every day, if someone's doing that, versus an automation of a software tool like you guys?
Sure. So I guess that's a great starting point. For someone doing it themselves, it really depends how big they are. Someone who's just getting started on Amazon definitely has their hands full. It's their first time doing things. They send their inventory to Amazon. And unless, you're looking at the settlement reports and you're looking at your orders and the price of the FBA fees that are coming in on a really hourly or daily basis, you have to look at the movement of inventory from different warehouses. There's a bunch of different reports, about 10 or 12 different reports that sellers can download from Amazon periodically, run them against each other, and then open up claims. There's a ton of people, there's a ton of YouTube videos out there that show you how to do it manually. The problem with doing that is it takes you away from the things that you should be focusing on. In addition to that, and maybe this is a good segue, even if you know how to open up that claim for the first time, and let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, let me add you in here real quick. Perfect. Yeah, go ahead. Yep, I got you.
So even if sellers figure, so this is our dashboard, and this is where we tell sellers about the information. This is where our virtual assistants also take actions to open up cases with just a few clicks. But even if a seller did know how to open up a claim, the hardest part, I'd say these days, is following up. So this is a case response from Amazon. So a case was opened, Amazon lost some inventory in their warehouse. And now imagine you get a response like this, a really lengthy response. Amazon wants you to read a few policies. They drop specific internal lingo like fair market value. It's kind of impossible for sellers and even for service companies, other of our competitors that are out there. And we had this issue as well. How are we supposed to respond to cases like this? If we're opening up thousands of cases a day for our sellers, tens of thousands a week, how are we supposed to dedicate 10 to 15 minutes? And for someone who's not experienced, maybe 30 minutes to read all the policies necessary and then type up, a crafty response to send back to them and disprove them, it really becomes impossible to do it manually for sure. So if anyone's doing this in-house on their own, if they figure out how to open up their case for the first time, following up is going to be the challenge. And going back, this can go back and forth with Amazon 4 to 5 times, as we've seen through our experiences. What Seller Locker did, and service companies have the same issue. If they have 10 or even 30 virtual assistants managing the hundreds of thousands of clients that they have, are they going to every single claim, the thousands of claims that they're opening up a day, and responding to each one? And it can, like I said, go back 4 or 5 times.
So you're saying, so to kind of like circle back real quick. So Amazon, with these kinds of claims, again, this is this lost damaged goods, remeasurement tools, or like they say your product is one dimension or this heavy. It's not. Amazon itself is having VAs that are going to be looking at each of these cases. Is that what you mentioned?
So customer support. So we open up a case for the first time, right? We open up that claim, and same thing that everybody else is doing. We open up a claim. Now Amazon, as you can see, has some pushback for you. Now they're giving us a response, and then now we have a response, and now they have a response, and then it's not a one-time clicking a button or figuring out how to run the report and pushing it. You need a full-blown process to manage the back and forth with Amazon, taking the case to the next level until you finally get that reimbursement in the end. And the challenge is figuring out how to respond to Amazon. So it's not just about opening up that case for the first time, but it's having a follow-up process in place. And this is where, like I mentioned earlier, having that software and the service function in our company, we were able to solve this problem once and for all. And we built this tool that can understand and respond to over 120 different cases from Amazon. So on the spot, instead of virtual assistants being trained to understand how to respond to this, or a seller themselves being frustrated with how they're supposed to handle a case like this, our tool on the spot can understand and disprove Amazon with just one click. So we're able to read off the page using machine learning. We're able to put together a crafty response. And just with this one click, we're going to respond back to this claim, disproving Amazon with their own policies. And that's really the perfect example of how through automation and through software, we were able to bring a lot of what we did in-house and a lot of what we learned over the course of the last 3 years and give the sellers an end product that can take a case all the way to the end. Many times the case just stops after that first response from Amazon, and sellers don't know how to respond to cases. And some companies, the virtual assistants that they're using aren't trained well enough to respond to these very difficult types of cases. And that's where the automation kind of kicks in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when cases like this kind of exist, what's kind of the number one way that a seller can maybe get a message like this? Because Amazon you have to first instigate the message, correct? Or you have to instigate the case. They're doing that. You're doing that through seller, your seller account. Is that
yeah, we run specific APIs in the back end, and we crunch the numbers, and we have an output. We open up a case to Amazon.
Right. So what's kind of from the data you guys collected over the past couple of years, what's the number one reason why people are losing their money?
So the big 3 are, inbound.
Give us 3. Hit us with the top 3.
Inbound payments are the biggest.
Okay.
That's the biggest category.
So that's from a warehouse or a factory to a fulfillment center, correct?
Yeah, so from a warehouse to a fulfillment center. The issue there is sometimes Amazon will receive it under the wrong shipment. They'll lose a part of the shipment. And the challenge there is having the right documents that you need to prove Amazon wrong. So to prove that, hey, my item got picked up. When it got picked up, all the inventory was there, and bringing that proof to Amazon. Many sellers don't have a system in place to keep track of their documents or their bill of ladings. And what SellerLocker did to go ahead and offset that is we have in our tool an area where sellers can go ahead and upload documents. They can even take a picture on their cell phone of a BOL and text it to their SellerLocker cell phone number. Every seller gets a phone number, and then we'll save those documents and bring them automatically to the case. So we're in the business of figuring out what the issues are, understanding it, breaking it down, and then creating tools to piece it all back together. Because it's really hard for sellers to now, where's that document? I know you just opened up a case, but it's been about 50 or 60 days since I've last sent out that shipment. With the tools that we have, we're piecing the entire puzzle together, but through tools. And now sellers can just whip out their cell phone, take a picture, and text it, and we'll go ahead and open up those cases with the right documents.
Cool. So almost like an Amazon lawyer, if you will, like, hey, the proof of the burden, the burden, the proof, and trying to say like, no, you're actually wrong, Amazon. So when you bring a case to Amazon, obviously there's probably tons of cases that are constantly going. People want their goods back, because what's an example maybe you can share with us of, hey, maybe Amazon, mislabeled one thing by an inch or something like that, or
Sure.
pound or something like that. What's something you could share with people to show how that kind of stacks up? And in all reality, over time, you just lost out on all that money.
Right. So I'll show you one of those.
And while Joseph brings that up, for everyone who's joining live, again, this is Crossover Commerce, our show to kind of give you as Amazon and e-commerce sellers a different perspective and different information on how to better yourselves in the Amazon e-commerce space. The show runs consistently. We're on episode 25 now, and we have co-founder of SellerLocker, Joseph. He's showing us, just about recovering money that you might have lost in various facets of Amazon in the logistics side or the seller side or fulfillment side. So he's showing us kind of just the small details that Amazon might have tweaked that you as a seller might have missed, and then where that kind of adds up over time. Because with ping pong payments, we're all about saving you as customers money. This is what Joseph does for a living. So he's gonna show this side of the business, how to save people.
You can see my screen again.
Let me add it. Let me add it. There we go. Cool.
So like I said, we're all about transparency. Giving the sellers the information so that we can help them, even more or get more accurate. So these are recent fee changes. So like you mentioned, prices or dimensions can go up, and that can happen at any given moment. So as you can see down here, even as of the 6th, this happened, last week, an item just got remeasured randomly, and the fee jumped from $732 to $770, or from $580 to $618. And this is going to keep adding up until the seller actually takes action, or unless they have a virtual assistant working their account and taking action for them. What does SellerLocker do in these scenarios? So obviously we're tracking it, and with one click of a button, but I'll show you some details. What happened here was Amazon has these measurements in their system: 11 by 8, 11.3, 9, 4, and 4.15. That totals up a fee of 11.30. What they did here was they over measured this product on a few of the sides. And according to Amazon's, tricky classification guide, that put them in a different tier, or the numbers that they were running were off because the measurements were off. And now this seller is getting overcharged $398 every single time an item is sold. And this is going to keep totaling up until the seller takes action. And even if they do take action, as you can see on the right side, this has happened many times to the seller. So they've won this case many times in the past, but Amazon just for some reason keeps getting it wrong on this product. So what SellerLocker does is, we're on top of it, we're tracking it, and with one click of a button, we're going to open up a case. So that case gets pushed over to an Amazon Seller Central form. So just with that, clicking that green button, we have this form that populates. In the text, we're going to tell Amazon, hey, I'm getting overcharged for this unit. These are the dimensions that you have. This is what it should be. I've been overcharged in the past, and I've gotten reimbursed in the past, so don't confuse that with this claim. They do that all the time. And and we actually give the sellers the orders for this case too. So they click this one button, it downloads the orders, they upload it on the other side, and boom, that case is submitted with just a few clicks of a button. Our virtual assistants do the same functions. They jump on the account and they open up the case the same exact way. And what's going to happen is that case is going to get submitted. Hopefully Amazon's going to remeasure it and get that fee reduced so that they can be, making the profits that they used or they should have been making. Going forward, the seller is going to be, taking that profits back to his pocket instead of getting overcharged. And that's what this purple section is in our tool. So every seller that fixes their fees, they don't only get a reimbursement back. So this specific seller got back $117,000 with us, but on top of that, they've also increased their profits. So when you lower your fee, that profit gets added to your pocket. And since they've started using us, they've made another $174,000 worth of profits because of the fees that they corrected.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So when obviously that's not for every single seller, right? It's not always going to be, hey, six digits, I'm going to just recover that magically. Obviously, if you're selling way less, this is something that it's a scalability thing, right? If you're selling millions of dollars on Amazon, you can potentially recover 6 figures, 7 figures.
So it's really from the average is from 2 to 3%. So
okay.
If someone's doing $1 million, they could potentially recover about, $20,000, $10,000 to $20,000 on average. And the bigger you are, the more money there is out there. However, certain types of products, there are huge mistakes on. We have a seller who sells backpacks, and for whatever reason, even though they just got started, Amazon just keeps remeasuring that backpack incorrectly by $5. So imagine your profit margin was supposed to be $7 on this SKU. $5 is just disappearing because of a mistake on their end. So it's not always relative to the percentage and the size of your business. Sometimes it's about what you sell. So regardless, every seller should have some type of auditing process in place, whether it's in-house, a third-party service that does it, with virtual assistants, or maybe the software and service combination so you can get some insight. But everybody needs an auditing system, regardless of how big you are.
I mean, that makes sense to me. So when we were going back to those top 3 things of where people are where the money or Amazon's basically, messing up. Number one was fulfillment.
Right. So inbound shipments. Lost and damaged. So that's when Amazon loses or damages inventory.
Right.
Open up cases the same way. A few clicks of a button, we submit those claims and we follow up. And then FBA fees, which is what I just showed you. So Amazon over measuring one of the sides of your product or all sides of the product, and that forces the fee that they're calculating to be incorrect. And now that money is owed to you for every single order.
So for FBA fees, what's kind of the breakdown for that for Amazon? Is that based on product dimension, or is that based on,
weight?
It's based on total weight, correct?
No. So it's depending. It's both. So it's the higher of the two. So Amazon has a very complex calculation: length, width times height divided by 129. It's a whole calculation, and they come out with their fee. But if the weight of the product is more than that, so it's very complex for sellers to understand. But could be dependent on their weight or the dimensions of their products. That puts them into some classification guide on Amazon's table. And then potentially if Amazon gets one of those measurements wrong, that could put you in the wrong tier. And that's where the mistake happens.
So where do people get that true value from? Is that you do from the manufacturer, from the get-go? Is that where people should get the true dimensions of their unit and their goods?
So so many people, we tell them to start with their top 10 best sellers, should go to their warehouse and either measure them or go to your manufacturer and get them. A lot of sellers have them already. A lot of sellers, when they created the product, they took all this information down. Some of the other things we do for sellers that don't have them is if they sell a lot of variations of the same product, we'll look for the outliers. So if the base average for this parent listing is, $319 and we find one that's $531, we'll call that out as an outlier and ask the seller to confirm the specific SKU so that we can open it without knowing 100% the correct information. But with the seller looking at it, now they can just jump on this one SKU, give us the information that they need, and we can move forward.
Very cool. So when a seller kind of goes through this and they might be approaching a service or they've never done this before, which we're highly suggesting you should continuously audit. How far back, if an Amazon seller is selling for 3 years or so, and they've never done it, how far back?
Category is different.
Cases?
Each category is different. Some categories are 18 months. inbound shipments are 9 months, which we said was the biggest. And then FBA fees got reduced from 18 months down to 90 days. So you don't have that much time that you can go back, which means that you continuously want to keep auditing and submitting these claims. If you wait too long and the orders were done, 95 days ago, all those orders are lost. You can't get that money back. So FBA fees are the shortest turnaround, which requires you to be on top of it more regularly.
So if in FBA fees over the last year, you had lost $100,000, for example, and in the last 30 days, you lost $30,000. You can only recover $30,000 of that total pie of $100,000. So you've literally lost from $70,000 in your pocket, which just sucks. And like, it just goes to obviously places that it shouldn't go. So, I guess the win rate for you guys, or like what's kind of like a typical win rate or like recovery rate for something in this industry? Is it more often than not Amazon is wrong and they're actually, they screwed up on their system, and all the data that they just compile is just misinformation, and they're like, yep, our bad, we'll fix that, and then they fix it?
They have a ton going on. They have millions of shipments probably coming in and out, or hundreds of thousands of shipments. So it's definitely not, I don't believe it's intentional, but yeah, they have their reporting data, and these mistakes can happen at any point in the process. It can get lost on the truck. It can get lost at the receiving process when it gets put on the shelves. They send inventory from warehouse to warehouse constantly so that they can have your inventory spread across the entire, USA. So there's a lot of room for error. I wouldn't say that it's intentional, but yeah, what ends up happening is, we know specific inventory was sent, true information from the seller, and we're going to question that against what Amazon received. And it's definitely dependent on how big the claims are. The bigger the claim, or the more amount, the more inventory that's being disputed, the harder it is to win those claims. The sweet spot, I usually say, is under $2,000. That is, the highest success rate of winning a claim is under $2,000. Anything over that is going to definitely be more challenging, but is still winnable.
Sure. And so maybe more a topical thing. I think I've seen it going around social media. There was a shipping container from, I want to say India or China, that was coming over to a fulfillment center. And I want to say that it either capsized or somehow sank, and it was 19,000 containers, which has goods from many different warehouses all over the world, or from that location, going to, I believe, an FBA fulfillment center. And in a case like this, maybe can you determine the distinction between like shipping, or like lost at sea, or like that would be lost goods, obviously. So like an insurance kind of capacity versus like a recovery tool like Seller Locker or whatever else there is out there?
I don't know that specific scenario would be Amazon's fault from an FBA perspective. Perhaps maybe you're referring to maybe a direct import shipment from Amazon, maybe on Vendor Central, where Amazon took control of the product from China. Now they're responsible for bringing it in, but Amazon is only responsible for the product either if one of their own carriers pick it up from your warehouse, so one of their trusted carriers pick it up from their warehouse. So from the second it gets picked up, that's when they will take responsibility for it. Or if you're sending it with your own carriers, the second it reaches the door. So at that point, they'll take responsibility. For an FBA seller, most likely, if the ship capsized, they're not gonna do anything. Right.
Well, I know that was the topical thing going around, and a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, hopefully your goods weren't on that ship, because obviously that's kind of like a really rare scenario. But in terms of getting fulfillment or your goods to a warehouse for Q1, Q2, that's devastating for people. Which obviously, that's why we should do insurance on your goods and your and whatnot. I get a couple other questions I have. And again, for everyone who's listening live, we've been here for about half an hour. Or if you're rewatching this later, I know it's super early for West Coast. Which again, are you on East Coast, Joseph? I always forget.
Yeah, East
Coast. So you're awake. It's like noon, almost noon by now. So we're good. We're like 3 cups of coffee in or something like that. Exactly. Yeah, almost lunchtime. So with the show, I kind of go into like a little bit more personable questions, or like kind of like vantage points. And then we'll kind of circle back and finish up a couple more questions if people have them in on LinkedIn, again, YouTube, Facebook. We're live on all these platforms. Or if you're watching later, we'll make sure we tag Joseph and he can answer those questions directly as well. When you get into fulfillment or like into an industry like this and you're recovering money, someone's on the hook for paying out? Is that Amazon, or is that the carrier itself? Like, who's on the hook and who's the one that's paying for these damages?
So Amazon's paying it out. It's getting paid from Amazon to your bi-weekly payouts from Amazon. So they're definitely the ones paying it. They may have their internal, insurance or whatever with these carriers that they're using, but it's Amazon who we are speaking to get the claims back for you.
Right. So again, the carrier can like have to pay Amazon or vice versa, but Amazon.
We don't know the logistics of that.
Right. That's on Amazon's side.
But I'm sure there's something that goes on there. But from our perspective, we're dealing with Amazon, and in most scenarios, it's their mistake.
Right.
More inventory gets lost at their fulfillment center than getting to the fulfillment center.
What's a common practice if somebody is it's their mistake, a seller's mistake? What do you see that's a common thread there? Is it they just input information, or their data or their files are uploaded incorrectly, or?
So that's a great point. So that's also part of the reason why we are a little bit worried to just give our account over to a 3P to manage for them, is sometimes our own warehouse makes mistakes. Mm-hmm. And in that scenario, we don't want to open up claims when we're the ones who made the error. We don't want to get ourselves in trouble. So what SellLocker did is for scenarios, and we have, statistics and we have a filter as to how we sideline these cases. But when there are specific shipments that don't look like this could have been an Amazon mistake, either too much inventory was lost or the entire quantity for that SKU never made it to Amazon, we'll sideline specific cases for the seller to confirm. And in those scenarios, the seller can click, yep, I sent this, or no, I did not, or they can adjust the shipment at that point. We're happy to open up the cases, but we don't want to open up cases that aren't accurate. So we'll sideline all these types of cases on the side, because the sellers do make mistakes. They think they have this inventory in stock. They create the shipment, or maybe someone created the shipment and then the warehouse person got there and the inventory wasn't there, or they sold it to somebody else, and they're not going to go back and recreate the new shipment. They just send whatever they have. And that creates a discrepancy. And that's what Amazon really doesn't like is, you're opening up claims, you're wasting my support services time with cases that aren't true. But what we'll do is we'll sideline them and have the seller just confirm them.
Can people get shut down if they open too many cases that they don't win? Or their listing get taken?
We've never had it for our account. If you go online, a few years ago, there were issues. It wasn't specifically because of that. It was more because cases were getting submitted automatically. I don't know what that means, but that's what I read about online. We've been in business for 3 years. We've never had that issue with our accounts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course, like we don't want to like bash on you. Do you know if people have like, if they just do them themselves though, and they're like, hey, Amazon, I know you're wrong. Is that an actual fear that people can have?
If your inventory, you lost it. I mean, we fight with Amazon 4 to 5 times until we say, hey, we've tried our best. So we're not scared of them. And if you understand the policies and you understand how they work, then you should for sure keep fighting until you feel like you've done your best.
Yeah. What's kind of the growth area for you guys as a company? I mean, from our perspective, there's lots of, and this is kind of my personal take. I'll kind of give an insight to for all the sellers who are listening out there for 2021. My prediction is I think there's a lot more diversification. I think that Amazon sellers and brands in general have seen just like they've been too dependent on just Amazon themselves, and diversification hasn't happened to the point where I think is needed to make sure that you're safe in case we have something like we had back in April or May where they just weren't accepting goods, or they weren't accepting necessary goods because their fulfillment centers were at capacity. What's kind of your growth trajectory? Are you guys looking to diversify into more marketplaces or more countries? What's kind of that futuristic approach?
So I'll tell you just 2 things that are on the. I mean, we're already beta testing them.
The agenda, right? This is the agenda.
So storage fees is a category that we are releasing this in the next 2 weeks, I'd say. So on top of Fba fees, where Amazon mismeasured and overcharged you on the delivery, they also mischarge you on the storage for the times that you didn't sell a product. Rather, you had them stored in Amazon's warehouse and you paid for that. So because they mismeasured it, you potentially took up more space than you did because the inventory was much smaller than what they charge you for. So that's a category that we're adding, which was dependent on Fba fees. What we are working on currently, something new, is we have about 20 to 30 virtual assistants working on our our sellers' accounts. So actually opening up the cases for the sellers, clicking the same buttons. We got very good at managing this, really big team, with SOPs, step-by-step guidance. And the challenge that many sellers have with virtual assistants in general, which is, managing them, making sure they have work to do, making sure that they get it right, tracking every single step of the process. That is a huge challenge for sellers because, they're busy trying to do what they want to do. They don't maybe have the time to manage a virtual assistant or overseas employee to make sure that that person is, doing the right work or at least has enough to do. And we got many requests saying, hey, the virtual assistant running my SellerLocker account is doing a great job. He's following up on all the cases. He's, getting the documents. It seems like you guys have great SOPs, and I have experience and my partners have experience selling on Amazon for a really long time. What else can you teach them to do? And then we put together a list of about 40 different things that we can train our virtual assistants to do. And we started training them, taking them to, to the next level. And that's what we've done. We have about 20 beta testers now that are working with our virtual assistants at a higher capacity, not just to open up cases, but to do two things. So we have 40 things that the VAs can do for your account on a weekly basis. So these are the 40 things. You can pick whichever ones are relevant to you, and they'll do these checked items. And then the seller themselves can also give them their own tasks, some personal tasks. We're working on a Chrome extension now that, with a click of a button, they can create a quick task for their VA that screenshots the screen or takes a small video for them and sends it to their VA. And through that Chrome extension, they'll be able to just manage the different tasks. But what we found is, sellers are really, really busy. They don't have the time to manage. They barely have the time to instruct the VA what to do. And if we can make it seamless to the point where they can click a button, record something, or send a screenshot or write a quick message to their VAs, they can potentially send them work. Our tool will manage the process and will, be on top of them with regards to training. We're already doing it for a few, for 600 sellers on our reimbursement VA program. And like we said, we have a ton of knowledge. Let's go ahead and advance it further. So our VA program is definitely something that's new. It's very highly trained virtual assistants working on these accounts with these 40 different tasks, plus their own personal tasks that the sellers are sharing with them. I think you're on mute, Ryan.
There you go. See, look, I can't produce and talk at the same time. This is what happens for everyone. Everyone knows this is not the first time I've talked when I'm on mute. So I always try to tune out all of the background noise when someone else is talking. So the beauty of being live. So when people listen to this later, they'll remind themselves, Ryan, you're not a full professional in podcasts. But anyways, we do best what we can. So when we're talking VAs, that's a good point. We've had a couple people on this show, our friends, Gilad from VAA Philippines, and we've had a couple other companies that have actually talked about VAs and how they can work with Amazon sellers. And that's one point I don't think that we touched on was utilizing VAs to really to manage to kind of the SellerLocker perspective of recovery and lost damaged goods, or recovering those things. How are you partnering with other companies? Are you guys yourselves, you're teaching VAs how to work on behalf of the Amazon seller?
Yeah, so we built the tool. The tool is built for sellers to use. So it's so simple to the point where sellers can do it just 3 clicks. There's a lot of different other parts of the process which we've streamlined with different tools. What we did is we partnered with a virtual assistant company. We gave them our level of training, our version of training. So they go through a whole training with that company. They come on board with us, and we have our own period of training where we shine, I guess, like I mentioned before, is the software. So being able to create these SOPs, tracking the entire process, being able to pinpoint where the issues are, troubleshooting, I guess, and then fixing it and going forward with better efficiency. That's where a lot of sellers have a hard time working with VAs. They don't have the time to go ahead and do that. But because we're doing it already for 500 or 600 sellers in the reimbursement space, it was really easy for us to channel that into other high touch categories that sellers need help with on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. So you said that's a growth area in terms of where people are, or you guys as a company are going to grow more. What's kind of the hardest thing to do in terms of maybe teaching a VA or kind of making sure that they're following your same SOPs or systems to make sure that everything falls in line. You're offering, sellers one thing, and you have to follow through on that, and you're relying on other people to do that work too. What's kind of that? Is that stressful for you, or is that something that you just have developed a great solution in place and found trustworthy VAs?
So I watched your show from last night. I was, hanging out. My wife was working. I watched your show from yesterday. I think it was from yesterday, from last week. And I think David from Amazon Expert said something really good. He said that, a lot of VAs come with their own training, and they have their own ways of doing things. And sometimes it's hard, especially you're not next to them. You can't just look over their shoulder and say, hey, you clicked the wrong button here, or you should have done this instead. So initially that was an issue that we had, being able to track and monitor every single thing that the VA is doing and making sure they're following the steps when they have their own quicker method, even though they think it's the best thing to do. But we have our way of doing things. So we had that similar experience, and we had to use tools that can monitor the screen, make sure that the steps are being followed. That was a challenge. It's something that, we've definitely streamlined and working pretty well. And we have 500 to 600 clients now, all working with the VA seamlessly. And all we have to do is add more types of issues or things that the VAs can do. In my opinion, there's certain things that sellers themselves have to do. I'm not against agencies in general, but the seller has to be involved in a major capacity with the direction of their business, the expected sales that they're hoping to get, what they're spending in advertising. They of course need to wear that hat and understand it and be on top of it, whether they're using service providers to take the actions. But there's so many things that the VAs themselves can do and bring it to your attention once it really needs to be escalated, like case management besides reimbursements. Every day a seller can sign in and there's 5 or 6 stranded things of inventory or suppressed listings, or you're not in the buy box for whatever reason. The title got changed, so now your sales dropped. These are things that a seller themselves, who only has 8 to 10 hours of the day, are they going to go ahead and spend their time doing that, opening up these 10 cases, going back and forth and confirming that it gets done? Or can they quickly instruct a virtual assistant, especially if that virtual assistant is trained in case management, to go ahead and create a process around that and just follow up and bring them, hey Ryan, these are the 8 issues, 6 of them are done, and 2 of them I'm following up. This was my response. I believe this is how I should follow up. What do you think? And if they don't get an answer, they follow up accordingly. But I'm saying These are things that the seller in no way should be focusing on, especially if they don't have the team for it.
Yeah, the word I think of is efficiency in that model of, hey, you just don't have the time. Again, what from Ping Pong's perspective, we're trying to do one of 3 things: obviously save time, save effort, or save money. I think that's what every service provider in this kind of e-commerce space is looking to do. So specifically in that case, it's saving time. It's also saving money. So you're hitting, I want to say you're almost hitting all 3, I think. So look at you guys. So this year for you guys, it's crazy time, right? Obviously, 2020 has been weird. This is a busy time of year for Amazon sellers. Do you feel like your business has seen a lot more traction because of how things have kind of worked itself out for this year? And then maybe part 2 of that question would be, do you see a seasonality where a lot of these issues happen, where people just like recovery is like higher in Q4 because there's just more shipments and there's more velocity in Q4? Maybe work from the beginning of 2020 and what your expectations were, how it's affected you guys, and then if you could kind of maybe chime in on that second part too.
Yeah, so we did a lot of building in 2019 for growth in 2020. We were ready for the trade shows and all that stuff for a huge customer influx. We did a lot of preparation for that. And then, we had in March, the trade shows get canceled and our recoveries were all the way up here. Shipments were flowing in. We had a ton of sellers. And what ended up happening was, all those limitations on shipments and the restrictions, and you can't send inventory, only necessary products. That definitely took a toll for our company, being that is the biggest category, which we felt for a few months, because if you can't send an inventory, Amazon can't make mistakes. So that affected a lot of our sellers and some of our bigger sellers. And we kind of had to just refocus, strengthen the team, strengthen a lot of what we were doing with the virtual assistants, creating a lot of processes in place to be more prepared once those limitations were, lifted. Like I mentioned, with the VAs being more on top of them, making sure our code base is strong and all of those things. And we also expanded into those other categories with the VA companies. We also released, an image optimization portion of our tool. We brought on a copywriter to work with us because we get requests all day long. Hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? So we started looking into those things while we had the time. And then, thankfully, when the inventory started coming in, we had that, increase once again, which is great. But it was, we had a high, we had a major low, and then thankfully, we're getting back on our feet. And it forced us to go into the digital marketing space. When we go to trade shows, we definitely make a splash. It's cool to show the software on the spot with the products that people have had recoveries on. It was something fun that we, totally enjoyed and had a great appeal at these trade shows. But without the trade shows, we had to move towards the digital marketing space, webinars, Google ads and all that stuff. So it definitely helped us. But we had to really change our focus because of all that went on and because of, there's no more trade shows for now.
Right. That's what other businesses do. The great ones adapt and they move forward and they change with the times. I think it's kind of cool, especially 7 months, I guess, more than 7 months now at this point, probably 8 months or 9 months that people have had to ebb and flow. I know that there's fatigue and like webinars and like things like this. I know specifically for me, we were going to be traveling to a bunch of shows, have a bunch of, events ourselves and then travel a bunch. But I think that's the one major thing that a lot of people kind of take for granted, or I think they won't take for granted moving forward, is the personal relationships that this business kind of thrives on, is meeting people face to face, kind of working out partnership deals, or at least learning about different companies and the face to face model. What is maybe 2020, if you dare to predict or dare to give like your wish list for 2021? What do you think what are your expectations kind of for the new year?
My expectations for Amazon sellers?
Yeah, Amazon sellers, the company, just the industry in general.
Well, I definitely see, we're seeing all the sellers and the sales that these companies are doing have exploded. For some companies, even by 50% since this all started. So there's a lot more inventory going back and forth. Mistakes are huge right now. We're seeing a lot more mistakes than we've ever had in the past. And we're managing those mistakes, which is great. So we don't want them to make mistakes, but we're definitely on top of it when it happens. And sellers themselves, they're going to be, scaling their business. It's just how quickly they can go ahead and capitalize on the new sales that they got and go ahead and either expand into new categories or just keep in stock and to make sure that they're totally on top of their game in all the different aspects.
Really cool. What I know we're butting up on time and we're kind of like capping off the end of this call. Again, for everyone who didn't get a chance to listen to this live, if you have a question, just comment in the stream on the YouTube link. We'll make sure that we tag or get in touch with Joseph. But Joseph, before we kind of cap off, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you at Seller Locker? Just have questions in general about what you guys do,
Sure.
The industry in general.
Sure. So one thing I wanted to just call out, I don't think we did this yet, but I'll definitely give you the link. We'll give whoever maybe signs up after hearing this webinar, we'll give the first $500 in recoveries free. So I'll give you that link and you can share that and everyone can get their feet wet and see, the Seller Locker difference per se as to, maybe why we monitor it either differently or our processes can help them recover more money. We can do a free audit on their account. So they go to sellerlocker.com, they click get a demo. Our little drift bot will jump up and one of our salesmen or account specialists will start talking to you and book a demo with you. On that call, we'll go ahead and see maybe what other companies missed or what you yourself doing it on your own missed, or maybe the other categories that we cover that others haven't that can help you get that money back. And 48 hours later, you can already start getting recoveries to your account. And we work with sellers, big and small, from the, guys just getting started. And we work with the most enterprise level sellers on Amazon. We have sellers who have recovered $1 million this year, winning over 10,000 cases. So we have the right pricing structure for everybody. We can. That's
the money with your tongue out emoji. That's a lot of recovery.
It was a lot of work.
That's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, 10,000 cases.
Gosh. Why don't you here? This is what we'll do for people who watch this. Again, for everyone who's listening live, awesome. We'll put the link. Joseph I'll actually ask him to put the link in those posts that we featured this video on both LinkedIn and on Facebook. And then that way they can have a direct place to go ahead and click. And then when you're talking to Seller Locker, again, it's like the gift of, it's the season of giving. So this is not something that we had planned before this. So thank you for this. Go ahead and mention Crossover Commerce to him if this is where you heard it or saw the link. And then that way we can kind of track and see more information and do stuff like this for the future. But this is obviously just more conversational of like the topic you're covering money. But thank you for that. It's really cool for our audience listening out there. So take advantage of that. We'll make sure we put the links in the post as well. What are your expectations for the rest of the year? Personally, professionally, what are you focused on?
Right now it's digital marketing.
Mm-hmm.
The team's ready. The salesmen are ready. The tool's working great. We're adding new categories. The VA program is working really well. More exposure in this new age. Yeah.
And do you have any kind of like wishes for biggest, maybe like what the failures that you guys did have in 2020? What you're kind of like iterating on in 2021? Is there like things that you wish like Amazon would release, or is there any kind of like I had this a couple days ago, I think, on the Talk with David. I said, what's your wish list that Amazon would do for the Amazon community? And he kind of gave me the top 3 as well. Do you have anything similar to that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the language that they use in their responses, totally, random and new things are happening all the time. Just last week, Amazon changed their entire interface and dashboard, and the entire code base on the front page of Amazon was different, and the support page of Amazon was different. Totally affected our business with zero notice. Happened, just randomly signed on, got a bunch of, hey, the tool's not working currently. What do we do? Zero notice on any changes, but I guess that's just the way things happen. We have to react as quickly as we can. So I'd wish there'd be more communication from that perspective, but it is what it is. We're just going to keep, plowing away, and we'll make the changes as we need to.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a good place to leave this. Again, for people who are interested in Seller Locker or just have questions for Joseph, definitely reach out to him on social media. I know you're active on LinkedIn. Does Seller Locker have official pages that they should go to or like or follow as well?
Yeah, I'll share that I'll share that with you.
Awesome. Yeah. So make sure, again, for everyone who's watching us live, thanks for joining in. I'll go ahead and cap off this episode of Crossover Commerce. My name is Ryan Kramer. I'm the host of this show. I work for Ping Pong Payments. We're a global, cross-border payments solution and helping pay suppliers company. You guys know the drill. Make sure you follow, like, and share these videos with your audiences so that they can get these tidbits of knowledge and apply to their own businesses. And again, subscribe or like our videos on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So thank you, Joseph, again for joining me today. It's awesome catching up with you guys and seeing what you guys did. 2020 sucks. I think we all can agree. It never goes as what planned. So I think the whole adage is like when God or when man plans, God laughs. I think that's the whole thing that we can apply to this year. But thank you so much for joining us today. And then, good luck for the rest of the year and what you guys have planned going forward.